So welcome to the first recording for Chemistry B, Lesson 1.02, Behavior of Gases. So the purpose of these recordings is to just kind of give you a brief overview of the lesson. I still highly recommend reading through them. You'll get more examples, further explanation, things like that. But this is definitely a good start and a good place for you to kind of see if things are making sense. So we're going to talk about different properties of gases that you can use them to describe the behavior of gases. And the sorts of questions you want to be able to answer with this sort of thing are things like, which container has the highest pressure given some sort of information? Or what happens when you squeeze a balloon? All right. So this is a good list of definitions to write down. These are some terms that we are going to use throughout Unit 1. You want to be able to describe these characteristics and how they relate to what's going on with the molecules of your gases. So pressure is the force caused by air molecules hitting the surface of the container they are held in. So if you've got gas inside a container, it's moving around and it's hitting the walls of the container a certain amount of times. All right, so if it hits the wall more, okay, so more hits, that's higher pressure. If there's less hits, then that's lower pressure. Then I would also be familiar with the units that represent pressure. So this is going to help you when it comes to, say, word problems. Sometimes it'll say, if you have the pressure of 2 atm, well then, okay, that's obvious it's pressure. But maybe the question will just say something like, so you have 2 atmospheres of oxygen. You got to remember atmosphere means pressure, okay? So definitely get familiar with those different units. Volume is something you are hopefully familiar with, but it's the amount of space that a substance takes up. So liquid volumes are often measured in liters or milliliters. And then solid volumes are measured in centimeters cubed and meters cubed. You can measure gases in that too, but generally that's how that stuff works. Temperature is a measure of the kinetic energy or movement. So that's what kinetic energy means. It's how much movement the molecules have. Okay? So higher temperatures mean your molecules are moving more. So just kind of think about that. If it's warm out, you've got energy, it's summer, you usually go run around, do things like that. When it's colder, all you want to do is curl up on the bed in a blanket, all right? So the higher the temperature, the more movement the molecules have. Colder the temperature, the less. So some familiar units there are going to be degrees Fahrenheit and Celsius. This might be new to you, but this is going to be a really, really important one for gas laws, is Kelvin. And then something to be familiar with, experiments are often done at standard temperature and pressure. And what that means is that a lot of times scientists will do their experiments with gases at a pressure of 100 kPa or kilopascals, which is equal to 1 atmosphere, and then 0 degrees Celsius, which happens to be equal to 273 Kelvin. So again, highly recommend writing these down. So let's practice what you just learned there. Detectors in the walls of 4 containers, A, B, C, and D, count the number of collisions between gas molecules and the surfaces of the containers. The detectors count 10, 15, 20, and 30 collisions per containers A, B, C, and D, respectively. All right, so what that means is A has 10 hits, B has 15, C has 20, and D has 30. So which container has the highest pressure? A, B, C, or D? All right, if you remember from our definitions on the other slide, more hits means more pressure, so D has the highest pressure. All right, so gases are unique because they have this feature called compressibility, which is why we talk about pressure related to gases and not related to solids and liquids. All right, so something that is compressible means that you can take the same amount of molecules and you can squish them into a smaller space. All right, when you do that, so you can take these molecules and you're going to shove them and make it so that they are taking up less space. When you do that, your pressure is going to go up because you've got the same number of molecules, but less room for them to move around. So they're going to start hitting those walls of the container more often. So a really good example of compressibility of air that is good for us is how we breathe. All right, so when we breathe in, all right, our diaphragm pulls down, and then that makes it so there's more space in our lungs, and then that lowers the pressure inside our chest cavity, which makes it so the air can flow in. And then when you breathe out, all right, your diaphragm relaxes, makes that space smaller again, increases the pressure, which forces the air out. So, some more properties of gases. Gases, like all molecules, are moving. All right, so they have kinetic energy. Gases are just a lot more impacted by changes of kinetic energy, or more noticeably. All right, so just remember that measure of temperature. All right, so as temperature goes up, the kinetic energy or movement goes up. Same thing, temperature goes down, everybody moves a little less. Kinetic energy goes. So, what will cause particles to slow down? Look over your choices here. Hopefully you've either been taking notes or have really good short-term memory because we just talked about this. All right, it's temperature relates to kinetic energy. All right, and then you got to remember that if temperature goes down, your kinetic energy goes down. So it's C, decreasing your temperature. Another property of gases is that they fill up whatever container they're in. All right, so you may remember the term diffusion from biology class. This is the same thing. So diffusion means that you're going from where things are very highly concentrated and then you're spreading out to where things are less concentrated. Gases do that too. All right, so if you have a perfume, all right, it's going to be highly concentrated around you, but if you walk into a room, it's going to start spreading out into the room, spreading to the other areas that have no perfume molecules. Or another type of practice, you can think about that. If you are cooking, all right, cooking usually produces a smell, which is going to be a gas molecule. What happens to those gas molecules? So, do the food smells move randomly, but mainly away from the pot and out into the room? The food smells just move directly away from the pot, just like in a straight line? Or do the food smells moving randomly, but mainly move from the outer area back to the pot? All right, so think about that. Where are the food smells going to be most highly concentrated? That's going to be at the pot where you're doing the cooking. All right, and then those molecules, there's no rhyme or reason to how they move. They're going to move randomly, and they're going to move away from the pot out into the main room. So choice A.